Okay, I think that I have everyone just about muted right now. Um, and so I'm going to go ahead and get us started. First off, I'm just so happy to see so many people on this Zoom. This is amazing. And I see people cheersing. There's Chelsea, and Luis. It's awesome to see you guys. Just seeing so many faces. I was just saying earlier that we just have to do this much more often. We're not waiting until next year's World Castleman Disease Day to do it. But happy World Castleman Disease Day. It's a day that we look forward to all year long. It's a day that we get the chance to wear our blue and tell people about Castleman disease. So before we get into our plan, it's going to be about 30 minutes from 11 we thought we'd start out by playing a brief minute and a half long video that our partners at Chan Zuckerberg Initiative put together somewhat recently. You guys may have seen this previously. But we think it just does a great job sharing a little piece of the Castleman disease story. And so I'm going to play it now, and I hope that it plays okay for everyone.
I was a healthy third-year medical student, and I got fatigue that I'd never felt before. I started having really severe multi-organ failure where my family actually called in a priest to administer my last rites. There's a photo here from when I was training for college football, and then you can see next to it, there's a photo of me after I got out of the hospital. I said, I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life to trying to cure this disease. I started working in the lab to identify patterns. What I found is that there's a drug that targets the mTOR signaling pathway called sirolimus. It's been over 5 years that I've been in a remission on this drug. Now we're giving it to other patients as well. I met Katie before her second birthday. My heart was broken initially when I heard about her diagnosis at such a young age. I'm patient number 1 for treatment with sirolimus. Katie's the second patient treated with sirolimus.
Watching Katie now is awesome. She's learned to ride a bike. When she grows up, she wants to help Dr. David. He might find a cure before she gets to medical school, but if not, she will know her disease forwards and backwards, and she'll be able to step right in and continue empowering other people.
Awesome. Well, I thought that would be a good way to kick off our World Castleman Disease Day. Obviously, that's just a very small portion of the work that we do and that so many of you all do. And I'm going to actually just mute a few folks that are in, and do mute your lines if you're newly on. We're going to have tons of time at the end for questions. Oh my gosh, I just love seeing all the new people on. So for all the new folks, happy World Castleman Disease Day. We're so happy that you're taking the time to come together with all of us to celebrate World Castleman Disease Day. I'm going to begin to share my screen again. And I do see some people are putting notes in the chat line. Please feel free to put in questions, comments throughout. You guys can chat with one another. You can also put in questions that we'll then be able to address towards the end of this 30 minutes. So today we really want to touch on 5 things. We want to first introduce you. Many of you know about the CDCN. We want to first introduce you to the CDCN. If you're new to the CDCN, we want to share about some of the progress that we've made thus far in 2020. Go into some of our remaining goals for the year, and then finish with how you all can get involved in helping. As you saw in the brief video, I'm David Fagenbaum. I'm a physician scientist who studies Castleman disease, and I'm also a patient who battles Castleman disease. And I'm so thankful to be able to battle it side by side with each of you, and that you guys all are part of it. I thought I'd start out with just a few photos. I first became interested in medicine and chasing after cures when my mom was diagnosed with cancer. And I promised her that I would dedicate my life towards helping patients like her. She passed away about a year after she became ill. And that really drove me to want to go into medicine, where I was making progress when I then became very sick myself with Castleman disease, which most people on this call understand better than anyone what that was like. when I relapsed on the only drug in development, which is now an FDA-approved drug, I realized that there was no hope for a future for me unless I got involved in research and turned my hope for a future into action, and started searching for drugs that could maybe save my life. And then I think maybe most importantly, I realized that I couldn't do this alone. And that's when I co-founded the Castleman Disease Collaborative Network with Fritz Van Ree back in 2012. And we realized that this was something that we were going to have to do together. There's only a handful of folks in this picture, but many of you that are on the call were a part of this first patient summit that we held at Penn about 4 years ago, where I think we had over 70 folks that came together for the patient summit. And it's all of you, it's our community, it's this network that make the progress that we've been able to make so far possible. So what is the CDCN? The CDCN is a network that's dedicated to accelerating research and treatment for Castleman disease and revolutionizing biomedical research. We started out with a laser focus on moving forward the science as quickly as we could for Castleman disease. And we learned very quickly that the steps we were taking really had an opportunity to make an impact even beyond Castleman's. So we really think about our work in four main buckets. The first is we conduct and drive forward research. So we always try to drive forward collaborative research. So many people working together. We enroll patients into a registry. Many of you guys are a part of the Accelerate registry. That is really the foundation of everything we do. We gain thousands of data points that we can understand and interpret per patient, along with information about the samples that go with them. We collect samples for research. Many of you all have contributed samples to research, and we help to support clinical trials like the one clinical trial that's open at UPenn. So that's really the research area. We also are very focused on community engagement. We realize that coping with Castleman disease is really, really, really hard. All of us that are a part of this, we get that because we're all battling Castleman's as well. So we work to support one another, engage physicians and researchers throughout the process, and recruit amazing volunteers. You'll meet a few volunteers at the end of this call, and many of you all have met many along over the years. In order to make our research and community engagement possible, we have to raise money. And so amazingly, there are individual donors who are so generous, so many of you on the call, that have donated to make this work possible individually, so on kind of a donation by donation basis, but also through events and campaigns like today, World Castleman Disease Day. We've been raising money for Castleman's research today, raising awareness. This is essential for us to make the progress that we need to make. And the last area that we've really been leading on lately is around rare disease leadership. And really trying to advocate for new ways to do research and to champion drug repurposing, taking drugs approved for one thing and trying them in other ways. So I thought I would start out with another slide around kind of the impact that we've made over the last 8 years. So in white on the screen, you can see where things were when the CDCN was started back in 2012. And I'm going to superimpose on the screen where things are today in 2020. So back in 2012, there was about $10,000 a year spent on what's called translational research. That's research that leads to new treatments. Over the last 8 years, thanks to you all support, we've raised $1.4 million over 8 years. We've spent all of that money on research, and amazingly, external groups have spent an additional $10 million on Castleman disease research. So it's a case where we provide the initial what are called seed grants, where we provide small amounts of funds, and then external groups come in and give multi-million-dollar grants to really exponentially grow our impact. The NIH has finally given a grant to study idiopathic multicentric Castleman disease. There's still never been an NIH grant for unicentric Castleman disease, so hopefully that'll come soon. We have a contact registry that hopefully many of you guys are a part of, that has over 1,200 patients that we can reach out to about studies. There were 2 organizations that existed before the CDCN, but since starting the CDCN, we've all come together under one collaborative network, working together to really have a unified research infrastructure and agenda. We've got a biobank I mentioned earlier that many of you all have contributed blood samples towards. It's really easy to do, and we're here to help any way we can. We've made progress, but a lot of questions remain. We published the first diagnostic criteria for IMCD a few years ago, and we have a diagnostic criteria and treatment guidelines for unicentric Castleman disease that are coming down. It's coming down the pipeline right now. We plan to submit that by the end of this year. We also published the first treatment guidelines for IMCD about 2 years ago. We published the first paper ever that describes a blood test you can do to help to get an idea whether you're more or less likely to benefit from siltuximab. Siltuximab went on to get FDA approval. It's an IL-6 blocker. Many people on this call are on siltuximab. It's the only FDA-approved drug for any form of Castleman disease. And based on the work that we do, there's now one drug in development other than siltuximab, and that's sirolimus, the drug that I'm on right now. I think there's some background noise. Just be sure to mute your line if you're not, or well, I guess everyone mute their line. So we've been able to get this one drug in development. Let's see if I can find out who's the guilty party who's making a lot of background noise. Sorry, I can't. I'm just gonna keep muting people. So let's see. I haven't figured out the person. Nice. Okay, I think it's getting quieter now. Okay. So of course, the work that we do and the progress we've made is not work that I've been able to do or anyone on our team has been able to do on their own. It's really been, it's been an incredible team effort. Oh, it was Jill. Oh no, it's still going. It's Penny. Aha. It was Penny. So of course, it could not have been done by any one of us. The only way that we've been able to make progress is because we've had an incredible team of people working together, really led by our board of directors, a few photographed here on the screen, also guided by our advisory council. So these are people who, some of which have connections to Castleman disease, others that just want to support the work that we're doing. And our amazing volunteer leadership team. You all recognize some of the faces here, but there's also people behind the scenes who have decided to dedicate months and even years of their lives towards the Castleman disease fight. And then also our scientific advisory board. So these are physicians and researchers from around the world who help to guide the scientific direction. So I have the opportunity and the honor to often represent the CDCN and to be able to talk about the work that's being done. But there is such an incredible army of people that are all fighting alongside me that many of you all know about, but even many that you don't know about. And just so thankful for all of the people who give so much of their time. These are a couple of photos of some of these people doing our what we call our Castleman Flex. I hope everyone got a picture doing the Castleman Flex and posted it on social media today. This is our one day of the year where we're allowed to do that and people don't look at us too funny. In addition to our incredible volunteer army, we also have an amazing network of physicians and researchers who are part of what we're doing. So they treat patients, they conduct research, they provide samples for research. And again, the work we do wouldn't be possible without this full community, patients, physicians, researchers, volunteers all coming together. So I'm going to take the next 5 or so minutes to talk about 2020 progress. And I have to start talking about 2020 progress by mentioning how we did today on World Castleman Disease Day. We've already raised over $3,000 for Castleman disease research. And I say and counting because World Castleman Disease Day is not over. Anyone and everyone can go to cdcn.org/donate and donate towards Castleman disease, the work that we're doing to support patients and drive forward research. These are just some of the pictures that were posted today on World Castleman Disease Day with the hashtag. So again, today's not over. If you haven't posted yet on social media with the World Castleman Disease Day hashtag in your blue, doing the Warrior Flex, I really hope you'll do it before the day's over. And I hope you'll encourage people to get that number up. We want to keep raising money on World Castleman Disease Day. Thinking about awareness, I wanted to share that this year, the last 12 months, has been the biggest year ever for Castleman disease when it comes to awareness. So cdcn.org, our website, had the largest number of visitors ever in September, getting close to 20,000 visitors in 1 week. And then that was when my book Chasing My Cure came out. But then there were more Google searches ever for Castleman disease this past year than ever before. So you can see the history of Google searches, and 100 is what we hit this year. But you can see relative, we had a nice spike back in 2017 when the New York Times ran a story. We had a spike again in January of 2018 when the Today Show ran a story. A spike again when my book came out in September, and then we had our biggest day ever when there was a viral TikTok video about our story. And it was the same week that Fresh Air and my book became a bestseller. That led to the largest number of Google searches ever. In fact, twice as high as any week before. So that was huge for Castleman disease searches and also for awareness. And what's great about these sort of searches and general awareness is that we find out about patients getting diagnosed based on awareness among doctors. So thanks for everyone who's helped to spread the word, amplify the work that we're doing. But who would have ever thought that a viral TikTok video would help to lead to the most Google searches ever for Castleman disease? And as I said, a lot of really good positive things that have come from it. We also launched a new website at cdcn.org, which I hope you guys have all visited. We've got a bunch of resources on it, and please do visit it if you've not gone there yet. And we also just recently, in the last few weeks, launched a new online patient and loved one community. We've been somewhat slow to shout from the mountaintops about the community because we wanted to get everything ironed out, but we think it's in a great place. And so if you haven't joined the community yet, I hope you will. Go to community.cdcn.org to access it. You have to be part of the CDCN community. You can get access to it. In there, patients can communicate with one another about their disease. They can get the most up-to-date information about Castleman's. They can ask questions. And importantly, the reason we built this is so that patients could contribute ideas towards research. We want to make sure that patients have the power and the opportunity to give us advice and feedback on research that needs to be done. In addition, we've made a lot of progress on research studies. You can check out our research pipeline at cdcn.org/research, where you get a full listing of all the studies that we're doing. And here's just a couple screenshots from it. Some highlights, we've had a number of papers come out over the last year related to our research, and this is years worth of research coming together. One of our papers was listed as one of the top 64 breakthrough medical studies of the year by Stat News. And each of these studies was funded through CDCN research. I mentioned earlier, we're all really excited because the first ever UCD treatment guidelines are close to being done. We have a meeting next Friday to finalize them, and we'll be submitting them for publication. We'll be giving a sneak peek to those treatment guidelines during our patient summit, which is coming up in August. And then our team, as many of you guys are aware, have spent a good bit of time also focused on COVID-19 and how we could apply what we've learned for Castleman disease to COVID. You can access everything from this website, but the bottom line is that we've extracted a ton of data on a ton of drugs, and this data is being shared with the FDA. We're really on the front lines as far as trying to identify drugs that can help COVID-19 patients, and it's been amazing to see the way the community has come together for that. So at this stage, I'm going to turn it over to Mileva, who's going to take us through the next two parts of the agenda. So thank you guys so much. Thank you for your patience with our interruption in the middle. And Mileva, it's turned over to you.
Thanks, David. First of all, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. I'm so excited to see so many people joining us for this year's Castleman Disease Day. I truly miss all of you, and I know that we're all super bummed about everybody kind of being stuck at home this year, and so I'm just really happy to see everybody's faces. Though we're already a little halfway through 2020, we still have some really amazing goals that we're trying to achieve here. One of those goals is hopefully to have our best patient and loved one summit ever. Our 7th annual Patient and Loved One Summit is just 4 weeks away, and it's quickly approaching. This year's summit will be held virtually, and while I'm extremely bummed myself that we can't all be together in person, I'm so excited that we have this opportunity to potentially have our largest summit yet and have attendees from all over the world come together to learn about Castleman disease, hear about the amazing progress that the CDCN is making, and continue to grow the friendships that we all hold so dear. This year's summit will actually be held over 3 days. So it's going to start on Thursday, August 20th. It's going to end on Saturday, August 22nd. There will be a great mix of education, storytelling, team building, and fun activities. If you have not already registered, please make sure to do so ASAP. You can do that by just heading over to our website. Registration will actually be open until the day of. So get those registrations in, and we're really looking forward to having you guys. Another key goal for the remainder of our 2020 that we're striving for is to collect the samples that we need to complete 2 key studies that will advance our understanding of Castleman disease. We had the unique opportunity this year to partner with the Broad Institute at Harvard and MIT to perform a large sequencing study of blood from over 300 HHV8 negative idiopathic multicentric Castleman disease patients. We already have 90 samples, which is truly amazing. And that's thanks to many of you here on this call. I know that we'll be able to reach this goal. If you have already been contacted by somebody from the CDCN, make sure to reach back out to us and coordinate to have your blood donation handled. If you have not yet been contacted and would like to donate samples to this, please visit cdcn.org/samples or reach out to one of the members of our team. We're also performing, and I know David has mentioned unicentric Castleman disease, we're also performing a large sequencing study of lymph node tissue and blood from UCD patients. And we're asking that those of you who have already been contacted to participate in this study, donate a blood sample as soon as you can. This will help us learn more about UCD so that we can continue to help current and future UCD patients. Donating samples is such an easy thing. It's something that Katie has done multiple times. And I think that some of us, myself included, have been a little hesitant on wanting to do that, especially with everything that's going on right now, but it is so easy, and all the members of our team are here to help you. So please make sure to come to our website and get those donations, and it would be fantastic. Our next goal is to continue to enroll patients into our sirolimus clinical trial, which was recently launched by the University of Pennsylvania and also the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences. This actually is a goal that I'm so excited about. As many of you have known, my daughter Katie spent quite a few years on various immunosuppressants and chemotherapies trying to get her Castleman disease under control. And after having an extremely major complication from one of the chemotherapies that she was on, we really felt like we were out of options. And now she's on sirolimus and she's actually doing fantastic. So this drug is now being evaluated in this important clinical trial as a potential CD treatment. Patients between the ages of 18 and 80 who have HHV8 negative idiopathic multicentric Castleman disease are currently in active flare and have failed to see improvement on siltuximab or tocilizumab should visit cdcn.org/trial for more information.
Happy World Castleman Disease Day. We ran into some technical difficulties with our Zoom with some hackers, and I really wish that that we had password protected it, but I really remember thinking to myself, we want to make sure anyone and everyone can get on. Let's just share the link with the world. So here we are. Mileva was going through the really impressive impact that we've been able to make over this year, and I'll just close out to say that when we set out to take on Castleman disease, I don't think we ever realized just how much progress we could make in such a short period of time, and certainly did not realize the impact we could make beyond Castleman disease. And so the last slide Mileva was going to share is related to a goal being to fundraise, to be able to achieve our goals, to make sure that we have the funding needed to do the work that's so desperately needed. So the part that we the last part of the slides was just to talk about ways that you can get involved in helping. We've talked about this already, but if you can donate towards Castleman disease research and patient support, that enables us to do the great work that we're doing. If you can donate your medical data, if you have not joined the Accelerate registry and you have Castleman disease, taking those 15 to 20 minutes is one of the best things you can do to help to improve understanding and treatment for Castleman disease. And if you haven't contributed blood samples yet and you're interested, let us know. We'd love to get additional samples so we can better understand this disease. So those are 3 ways. We talked also earlier about how raising awareness, posting on social media about Castleman disease, about World Castleman Disease Day is so important. And making sure to get your photos in doing the Castleman Warrior Flex. So that's actually the full slides. We were so close to being done with our slides when we got hacked on Zoom. But we're now in Google Live, and I love seeing all the people in the comments section. If anyone wants to type in their comment or questions that you have for either Mary, Mileva, or I, just go ahead and put those into the comment bar on the left, and we would be thrilled to answer any and all questions you might have. And let's see. I love the encouragement. Thank you, guys. This was incredibly frustrating. um, any questions or comments? And I really wish it was a little bit easier and interactive, that you could actually ask the questions as opposed to having to type the questions in. But please do feel free to throw them in.
Someone had asked about using the samples. So maybe you can give an update on the number of samples we've collected and how they're being used.
Sure, absolutely. So Maleva was in the middle of talking about samples when things went wrong. But basically, we no research can be done into Castleman disease without samples. Samples are just essential for research. And one really important study requires us getting blood samples from IMCD patients and also from unicentric Castleman disease patients, as well as lymph node tissue from unicentric Castleman disease patients. And so these samples are essential. We can't do the work without the samples. And the good news is that we have a lot of lymph node samples. What we really need are blood samples from patients. And so if we've been in touch with you, if we've reached out, we hope you'll take. Hopefully, it's nice and easy and convenient. We have an arrangement with Quest Diagnostics, so you can go to get your blood drawn at a nearby Quest lab, and we help to cover all costs and handle all logistics to get those samples sent back to Penn. So it looks like we have a comment in here about the significance between HHV8 positive and negative. So that's really, really important for treatment purposes. Patients that have HHV8 positive multicentric Castleman disease respond really, really well to rituximab, and their disease is generally controlled better with that particular drug. Whereas patients who are HHV8 negative and have multicentric Castleman disease don't tend to respond as well to that drug, but tend to respond better to another drug called siltuximab. And so really the importance of distinguishing the two is all about treatment. One does better on one drug, the other does better on another drug. And then there's a question about, is there a timeline for when people should go off sirolimus? So we certainly don't have data on when someone should go off of drug. It's a relatively new in the world of us studying it. I started on sirolimus about 6.5 years ago. I'm certainly the patient that's been on that drug the longest that has IMCD. I have no plans to go off of it. I'm very pleased to be in remission and have a lot of nightmares of when I was not in remission. So I have no plans to go off of it, but obviously it's something you can talk to your doctor about if that's something you're interested in. Let's see. I love all the comments. There's a question about, our samples limited to the US? No, so we actually can collect blood samples from patients outside the US. We just collect a different kind of blood sample. It's using a different tube. It's less blood drawn, but we absolutely are open to blood samples being sent to us from outside the US. Jessica asked a great question about, if you're on treatment, can you still donate blood? You can, but to Jessica's point, it's actually a lot more complicated to interpret, but we will. So yes, we still will take samples from patients that are on treatment, and we'll try to interpret the challenges that come with it. So Mordecai asked a really important question about extra concern that we may have for the community about if we were to get COVID-19. So there have been a couple of patients that have posted on Facebook thus far saying that they have been infected with COVID-19. Certainly, it's been a very small number, so we really don't have any indication as to how COVID affects patients with Castleman disease. But I can say that I personally have been very, very precautious. My wife and I and daughter Amelia have really tried to be uber precautious and do a lot of really kind of intense quarantining. And so the main reason being that, that we expect that Castleman disease patients would have sorry, Maleva, you might just throwing yours on mute. We expect that the Castleman's patients that have an overabundant response to immune activation would potentially have a worse outcome if we were to get infected with COVID-19. So Mordecai, you're exactly right. We're all concerned about it. We don't have any strong data to say, yes, this is the case and this person did worse than you would expect otherwise, but it's certainly something that we're worried about. So there's a question around having unicentric Castleman disease and the chance of another mass growing back in the same area. So lymph node masses in unicentric Castleman disease can grow back in the same location. It's quite rare, so less than 10%, maybe even less than 5% of unicentric Castleman disease patients will have a recurrence of an enlarged lymph node. So it's quite rare. But it can happen. And then there's a question about, can unicentric become multicentric? There are no reports that we're aware of a patient having unicentric and it becoming multicentric, or vice versa, multicentric becoming unicentric. They seem to be two different diseases that look the same under the microscope. So we call them both Castleman disease because under the microscope they look the same, but they seem to be different. And one thing I should say, there are some more questions around dosing of drugs and side effects of drugs. I mean, I think the number one thing that I want to highlight, and that if Maleva was on, we would highlight as well, is that we have our annual patient summit coming up in just a few weeks, and it is the best opportunity to learn the most cutting edge information about Castleman disease treatment, diagnosis. There'll be a number of scientific advisory board members, world's experts on Castleman disease that will be on as part of the patient summit and able to answer questions. We'll have a lot to be responsive to feedback that you guys have given us. We'll have a lot of time for Q&A and these sort of really good questions. So I love seeing all the questions. I love seeing all the engagement. I love seeing all the people who are on, who are giving us lots and lots of support. Today is a really important day for us. Castleman disease has affected us all in so many ways, and I love that we're a unified front, and we're going to do what we can to raise as much awareness, as much funding as we can for Castleman disease, despite the Zoom trolls. And I've learned my lesson. As much as I want meetings to be open to anyone who wants to join, I think I've learned my lesson that we will absolutely make future Google or future Zoom meetings closed off. Let's see. I'm just going to look to see if there's any other questions in the chat that we can talk to.
So what can we expect about the UCD guidelines coming out?
Really good question. So the unicentric Castleman disease guidelines we've been working on for over a year now, and it's basically we've pulled together as much data as we can, and then we've gotten experts together to talk about how to interpret the data on what is the best way to treat a patient with unicentric Castleman disease, based on how they present, based on how they respond to first-line therapy, second, third line. Basically an algorithm on what do you do for a UCD patient. So. We have a meeting next Friday to finalize those guidelines. We'll probably be able to submit them for publication over the next month or so. So if you're part of the patient summit, you'll get kind of a sneak peek at the data before it's submitted for publication, and then it'll go through rounds of peer review where physicians and researchers will look at the data and determine if they agree with what we're recommending or not, suggest changes. That'll then get published, and then that'll be information that your doctors will be able to use to guide therapy for you. It's been really helpful in IMCD to have treatment guidelines because there are a lot of doctors that have very little experience with Castleman disease that really, really benefit from being able to have some evidence-based guidance.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a question from Melissa saying she received a sample kit. She's going to take it to her doctor for a unicentric sample. Can you talk about what each vial is for and if her results will be shared?
Oh, great question. So Melissa has received a kit. She's a unicentric Castleman disease patient. She's received a kit with tubes so that she can provide a blood sample. And I love hearing that she's planning to get that blood sample drawn. So the tubes are really for two reasons. One is to get DNA. So we're looking for, so in your blood, you have a number of white blood cells. We'll pull those white blood cells out. We'll extract DNA from those blood cells. And the main thing we're looking at in unicentric Castleman disease is we want to know, is the DNA sequence of cells in your blood, is it different or is it the same from the DNA sequence of cells in your lymph node? Our hypothesis is that there are actually differences between the DNA in your blood versus the DNA in your lymph node, and those differences are called mutations or somatic mutations, and we think those could be what causes unicentric Castleman disease. And so as a result, we want to know what's the DNA of the blood to compare it to the lymph node. We also will take some of those cells and it's called cryopreserve them. So we'll pull out the white blood cells, and then we will store those cells in liquid nitrogen so that we can thaw them in the future and run experiments on them. So those are the primary things. So it's sequence, and then also preserve cells for future research. As far as results back, so when we do research, there's certain rules around if you have a certain lab where you can provide clinical data to patients versus if you don't have a lab that provides clinical data to patients. We have a lab that is the kind of lab that does research and we don't, for example, run clinical tests and give those results to patients. We do laboratory research, and then that research gets published, and then doctors can make decisions and change practice based on that research. And so as a result, your direct data, so your DNA sequences from your blood, will not be reported back to you because we're not allowed to ethically, because our lab doesn't provide clinical assays. However, everything that we find out from your sample will go into research studies that get published so that everyone in the world, any researcher, any doctor, anyone can learn from that. And so what we find out from your blood sample will inform what we think about the disease, inform treatment, inform care for patients. And so you may not see what is your DNA sequence, but we will know what is different between lymph node and blood, get that out to the world, and then anything that has a direct impact on your care will absolutely be changed based on that information.
Really great question, Melissa. And like Dave said, so happy to hear that you
Yes.
are taking that kit in to collect the sample. We had another question from Leanne about how often samples can be donated.
Yeah, good question about frequency of samples. So our rate limiting step for samples is that it costs money, and it takes time to do the processing on our end. So we can't get unlimited samples in. And the second is making sure that we don't want any patients to give too many blood samples. I mean, fortunately, the amount of blood that we're pulling is not a huge amount of blood, so it's not so much a concern that you can't give too many times, but it's really an issue about we just don't have the funds and the bandwidth to be able to process multiple samples from the same patient. What we've decided instead to do is to get more samples from many people instead of many samples from just a few.
That's great. Also, shout out to Adrienne Carter. Adrienne's going to her doctor next week, and it sounds like she'll be getting in touch with Rosie from the biobank.
Nice.
Another question, sort of logistical about the slides from the presentation tonight. Will we be able to send those out or share them with the community?
Yeah, absolutely, Mary. So yeah, we'll get you guys the slides because unfortunately you didn't get to see the last few slides. But the good news is that we got through all but about 2 or 3 slides. But yeah, we'll share those with you guys for sure.
Great. And one more, I think we can take a few more questions and go a bit past 7 because of the disruption. So keep the questions coming.
Yep.
But next question, looking for an update on some of the COVID work that's underway and how we're impacting the broader community there.
Sure. So I went through that really quickly. Basically, our team has found over 200 drugs have already been tried in the first about 64,000 patients with COVID-19. So doctors are trying lots and lots and lots of drugs. And as you guys have all seen in the media, some drugs are working, some drugs aren't working. The difference between what's in the media and what's in our database is that the media is really only talking about a handful of drugs, but as I shared, there are over 200 that are currently in use. And so our effort is really twofold. It's to get all of that information in one central place. This is amazingly the only database that we're aware of that's tracking all drugs being used in humans with COVID-19. Then our second goal is to also identify drugs that aren't part of our database, that aren't already being used, that maybe should be used, that based on our research, we say this drug or that drug should be used, even though it has not yet. So it's about tracking drugs that are in use. It's about finding new drugs that should be tried. And I guess the third thing I'd say is it's about using all of that data to figure out which drugs look really promising to move forward to clinical trials. And we've been working really closely with FDA and also more recently with the Department of Health and Human Services to use our data to be able to prioritize what drugs should be moving forward to trials. And I guess I would say the other thing as far as progress goes is that there's one drug called dexamethasone that is actually often used in Castleman's patients. I'm sure most patients that are listening in have gotten some dexamethasone over the years. Dex has now been shown to have a very clear survival benefit for patients who are on ventilators. A really, really impressive improvement in mortality. If you're on a ventilator and you get dexamethasone, major risk reduction of death. However, if you get dexamethasone too early in your course, so like if you were to get it when you just started, were just hospitalized or just started feeling ill, it looks like there's actually a worse outcome of taking the drug. So it's really about timing. It's not like everyone should get on Dex. In fact, it actually might make you worse off if you're on Dex when you get sick. But if you're late stage, then Dex can really have an impact. There's another drug called interferon beta that looks like it might be helpful early stage, but we're all waiting for some more data to come out on that. Interferon beta has been given to thousands and thousands of patients in our database all over the world, but there's a new study that suggests that it's particularly helpful. And then drugs, Castleman's drugs like siltuximab and tocilizumab have both shown really promising results in early studies, but we're all, again, eagerly awaiting more and more results.
Yeah, it's amazing to see the CDCN really at the tip of the spear in the medical community and leading the way here. You mentioned before that you're obviously, as a patient, quarantining really seriously as someone with a suppressed immune system. So if people need to venture out into the world, what advice do you have for staying safe?
Yeah, I think that the world is so complicated right now with COVID-19, and my opinion is that at least for me and for my family, we're being as extremely cautious as we can be. Whether that's the right thing for everyone, I don't know, but at least for our family, we just said we're going to be as extremely cautious as we can, which means that we avoid going in places that we don't have to go into. We avoid going into any sort of large crowds. We do wear a face mask. We do a lot of hand washing. I think these are things that not everyone wants to do and not everyone necessarily has to do, but at least those of us that have an immune system that is prone to hyperactivity, it makes me worried. And so it makes me worried for all of our members of our community. And so I think if you've heard that it might lower your risk a little bit, I just don't see why, if you have Castleman disease, why you wouldn't want to do that extra step. And of course, it also goes without saying that the people around us have to do the same sort of things that we have to do, or else it's almost we almost don't need to take all the precautions if those people around us are not taking them.
That's right. No, it's such a challenging time for everyone, and I think especially those with underlying conditions that are more at risk. So we're really excited for the patient summit that's coming up, like Maleva was saying. I think we have some lessons learned on how to conduct our Zoom.
Yes, we do.
So Maleva, now that you're back on, do you just want to talk a bit more about the summit and what to expect?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you guys so much for bearing with us. I know how frustrating that was, especially to come and want to get all this information and not be able to, have it go as smoothly as we envisioned, but definitely a lesson learned. I know that a lot of us have been bummed that our annual Patient Loved One Summit will not be held in person, but we are definitely working hard to bring to you guys the best content that we possibly can on a virtual platform. So like I was able to briefly touch on, it's going to be over the course of 3 days. It will be on Thursday, August 20th, Friday, August 21st, and Saturday, August 22nd. Each day we'll have about 3 hours of content. So from 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to about 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Registration is open. So if you go to the website and, start join the registration and get your registration into us, we'll be able to send out some pertinent information to all of you guys about the actual agenda. As always, we're going to be covering important topics like what is Castleman disease for the new people who are going to be attending, talking to you guys about, how to manage your Castleman disease, the treatments that are out there and available, new research that is being done. We're also going to have some really awesome opportunities for some team building, some story sharing, and also a fun possible meal together. We'll all be able to kind of join in at the same time and have like a lunch session together. We kind of just really get to chat and get to know each other as well.
Yeah, it's always like such a huge highlight of the year. So again, I know we're all disappointed the patient summit won't be in person, but again, hopefully we'll be able to make the most of it, and yeah, be able to do virtual meetings, virtual lunches, all password protected, all with waiting rooms on Zoom. We will absolutely do that so it doesn't happen again. I just saw a message from Mary asking about blood samples. So we can get blood samples that are either the blood samples can be drawn at a Quest Diagnostics near your house. It can be drawn from your medical doctor at your hospital, and it can also be drawn at Penn. But we've just found that during this busy quarantine time, that oftentimes the Quest samples are the easiest, or Quest is the easiest place to go to.
We have another question on unicentric Castleman disease. So, are you able to give a recommendation for those who have had a mass removed but are still experiencing symptoms? It seems like sometimes doctors are dismissive of them, and convincing them to further test is difficult.
Yeah, that's such a good question. So it's something that we do address in the treatment guidelines paper, but it's really hard because there aren't any studies on unicentric Castleman disease patients who have basically continued symptoms after the lymph node is gone. And we know that that happens because there are a lot of you, many of you who are on this call right now, and certainly many who are part of our community, who the lymph node's gone, blood tests are all completely normal, but there's continued symptoms. And so, unfortunately, there's not clear data on what to do for those of you that are dealing with that. But we hear you, like we hear you loud and clear because so many of you have shared this with us, and as you know, in the medical literature, this has not really been described before, the idea that you could have unicentric Castleman disease, that you get continued symptoms even when blood tests are normal and even when the lymph node is gone. So we're going to continue to look into research and studies and drugs that could be helpful. I think one of the things that we've been kind of falling upon as well maybe some of the multicentric Castleman disease treatments could be considered. But unfortunately, drugs like siltuximab and tocilizumab don't tend to be helpful unless you have a number of abnormal blood tests. And so if you have unicentric Castleman disease and you don't have abnormal blood tests, then it's probably unlikely that either of those two drugs would help you. But we will continue to look because we understand that that's a major, major need.
Absolutely. So it looks like questions are slowing down a little bit. So maybe we'll go ahead and close out the session for tonight. But really big thank you to everyone who joined. We'll look to get the materials back out to you. And Dave, I'll throw it over to you just for some final words.
Yeah, thanks so much, Marion. Thanks so much, Maleva. I appreciate everyone's flexibility with tonight. It really was. I have to say, it was really special for me to see so many faces that I haven't gotten to see in a while. And so we will plan another one of these soon. We'll probably do it around the time of the patient summit. Certainly, the patient summit's a great opportunity. But I think that this is just, it reminds me of how special this community is, to actually be able to see one another. And so we'll make sure that this is not the last. And certainly we're hopeful it's the worst. Hopefully it only comes up from here. But I do think that it was really special to be able to spend some time with you guys on World Castleman Disease Day, and to have you guys all share your encouragement, support for one another. I'm going to try to respond to comments that have come in once this is over, but just so appreciate everything that everyone has done to help to raise awareness. I mentioned we're up to $3,100 raised. Hopefully, we continue to increase that number today. Hopefully, we continue to share and spread more awareness about Castleman's on World CD Day. And hopefully, we see many of you guys in just a few weeks for our annual patient summit. Thank you guys so much. And as always, we didn't list it, but you know our email addresses, you know our phone numbers. Just call us, email us. We're here to support you any way we can, and we thank you for everything you guys do. All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys, so much.
Thanks, Malava.